Hello, Brian Hogg here, creator of the Events Calendar Shortcode in Block Pro, and I want to show how to find and add CSS rules to your site. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, is the way that you can customize, say, the space between these events, maybe the color of this button, maybe the styling of some of this text, and maybe the background color of each event, etc. So how do you find these rules and how do you add them to your WordPress site? There's a lot of great resources on how to learn CSS and what it exactly does, but I hope this video will be some practical examples that you can just use right away. And if you want to dive in more, there's a lot of resources out there. So as an example, we have this photography website, and they've added the shortcode under this current and upcoming events heading, and it just shows the events, but there's a bit too much spacing, say, between the title and the time of the event. Maybe we don't want to have this be bold. Maybe we want to change some of the spacing in this title here. So how do we do that? So in Chrome and most other browsers, you would just right-click, go to Inspect, and it brings up this window where you can see all the HTML, so the code, I guess, that is outputting these events, and then also any CSS rules that are being applied to it. And if you want to actually, you can either right-click and go to inspect on a specific thing that you want to change something about. Maybe I want to change the color or the font size of this title. But you can also use this little arrow with a box, and you can go around and you can click on the very specific thing that you want to change. So we can see if I click on this that it's got this rule here. Oh, font size 26 pixels. Great. So that's the size that it's there. You can even uncheck and check and see what happens if this rule wasn't there and you want to change it. And so say I want to change this particular rule from 26 to some other size. So the great way to override a rule is to literally copy it. So if I click this, it'll highlight automatically all the parts of a rule, and I'll go through kind of what each piece of this is in a sec. But if I copy this, so maybe right click and copy, and then if I click on this little plus here, this is just in the browser. This won't actually save to your site. But if you click on this plus and then paste, you can see now I've got the exact same rule. And because CSS is cascading, something that shows up the exact same rule but shows up later, which is where it will appear if I go into our little customizer, or should, depending. Because it's later, it'll have more precedent. It'll override anything that happened or any rules that came before it. So if I put this in, this will be after, even though it's above, it's later. And then if I go font size, say 36 pixels, now we can see, great, look, it's increased the size of that font. So I know that this CSS rule is correct. I know that the font size is 36, and you can actually use the up and down arrow to change the size and just kind of see how it looks. There are a lot of other rules that I could change, like maybe the color, which would be the font color. So I can say red, and there's a whole bunch of other reds, or you can use what's called these hex codes. So that's not a great color. It's almost white, but that's like a black. And you can look up hex codes and color codes. There's a lot of ways to find different colors if that's what you want to do. You can also look at spacing. So there's padding, which would say maybe even padding top. So maybe I want to have a bit more space between this text and what's above it. So I could say like 5 pixels or maybe 25 pixels. So that doesn't apply because of other rules. So sometimes, as you can see, they kind of override each other. And so sometimes you have to play around and see which rules are happening. But again, I can check, uncheck, and see how it affects. So that doesn't work on that one. But how do we see where the spacing is between this event here and then these other text that's here between them? So if I kind of highlight around, and you can either do it here or I can do it in this arrow here, you can see that if I kind of click on this. Okay, so this is the link, but then around it is this H2 or heading to tag. And if I click on that, you can kind of see that orangey spacing between the top and the bottom, right? And then if I look down here, I can see this is kind of more grayed out. But for this particular H2, you can see that the theme, the WordPress theme, is adding this rule for wrapper, this post content H2, and it's adding font size of 30. And then if I scroll down, there should be something about spacing, because you can see that it's got this like padding on the top and the bottom, or margin depending. Oh, there you go. So you can see this like margin top, margin bottom. And if I kind of click that, great. So you can see that this is the rule that's happening. And if I removed it, then that spacing, this EM, I don't exactly know the units, but it's a way of measuring instead of pixels, the space. So if I check and uncheck that, you can see that this margin top rule, and then similarly the margin bottom rule, is what's being used to determine how much spacing comes before and after this little block. So this is just H2, so this is a pretty easy rule. So I'm not sure if I click on this and then hit plus, no. So when I hit plus here, it's gonna give a suggestion of what rule to use, and maybe this will work, but this is very specific. So this is saying, okay, so for H2, I've got this class of ECS event title right there, and it also has a class of this LL at font. I think this is being added by the theme. You can see this like at size, at line height. So because there's no space in between each of those, this dot is this class here. And then because there's no space, it's like an H2 with this class and this class and this class and everything else. So we might not need to be that specific. So let me just try H2. And then when we have margin top 0, there you go. So I don't need to be that specific. I can say for all H2s on the site, change the margin top to 0. Might not want to do that though. I actually do want to have this apply just to this one. So maybe I can say, okay, h2.ecs event title. There. So you can see that it still kept the removal of the spacing at the top. If I check uncheck, now this rule will only apply to H2s within ECS, so event calendar shortcode titles. So now it won't affect the rest of the site because I've made it more specific. It's just going to be for these H2s. So that's kind of nice. So I've kind of quickly gone through. So the dot is for classes. H2 is this element here. And yeah, you just try and see which ones apply. You can still see that, oh, there's some spacing below it. So if I do say margin bottom 0, there you go. And if I refresh, or if I added this to the site and then refreshed, because it's using a bit of scripting to figure out how this like kind of Pinterest style layout works, if I added this rule, refreshed, it would kind of remove this spacing here. So yeah, so that's how you add or find a couple examples of how you find some rules. And if I want to add this to a site, I'd be able to copy this. So if I just highlight it, looks a bit weird because I'm kind of like got these checkboxes and I'm highlighting the whole thing. That's fine. And then if I go into a site, so I don't have access to that particular site, but if you were logged into your WordPress site, you should see this customize link at the top. And if you click on that, and then here under additional CSS is where you can add that rule that we just pasted. So now if I copied. So if I paste that rule, you can see it's commented out because I had unchecked it, and I can just delete that. So that is now saying, okay, H2 with the class ECS event title, margin top 0, and there you go. So then if I hit publish on that, refreshed the page, it should show up with less spacing, depending on what this rule is. So we've gone through a lot, but just to kind of make sure we understand where these rules are coming from, these are just using these classes on the elements. But as an example, this is actually one thing that the plugin itself is adding. So how does it come up with this? So we've got this ECS events. So where's that? So you can't actually, because if you hover over this, it's just showing you the links, and it's highlighting all the links that match that rule. But if I scroll up a bit, And it's kind of hard to see, and especially with more complex sites, you can see, okay, cool. So this is where the class ECS events is coming from. It's this div element that has ECS events, and that's the kind of overall wrapper for all the events of this particular shortcode. And you can see that it has also this ECS grid class. So it also has that, so there's no space between this ECS events and ECS grid. You can see it's also got ECS grid 1, so that's a particular instance of the shortcode. You can have more than one on a page, and the second one would be number 2 and number 3 and so on. But you have to know that. You can just see that this div has ECS events, ECS grid, ECS-1, and then also ECS event. So there is a space here. And then ECS event. So where's ECS event? So each one so this is all of the events. And now each event has a class ECS event. So that's why there's space, because it's now something within this one with ECS events, ECS grid, ECS-1. Now I want to match each of these ECS events. So there's those. And then within that, now I got to see, okay, where's summary? Oh, there we go. So now we have a class with summary, and there are other classes here, but I only need to specify one to make it a little more specific. And then I also have A. So A is this link tag here. So I'm saying, okay, great. So for all things that are within this ECS events div that are also an event, that also are within the summary, and then for each of those links, set the font size to 26 pixels. So that's an example of kind of where that rule is coming from. And as one more example, so say we did want to change the font size. There's also a font size specified on this H2. So where's this wrapper post content H2, like where's that coming from? So it's a little more awkward. So I think if I click, actually I'll go back here just to highlight that H2. So I think if you do Command F on a Mac, it's probably Control F on Windows to find. So now, okay, where do I do, so selector or XPath. So if I do wrapper, there you go. Okay, so if I hit enter, or you can use this little up and down arrow, and you can see that it has our div wrapper. And so that is a wrapper. It's highlighting pretty much most of the entire page. And it's a hash or a pound symbol, because instead of a class, it's an ID. And you should only should only be one element or HTML element on the page with a particular ID. So it's very specific. It's this one element with this ID of wrapper. So that's the pound. And then where's post content coming from? So we have dot post content. So that's some rules. There you go. So post content again is like most of the page. So we have our div ID of wrapper. We have post content here, and then H2s within that. We're saying that we want to have font size of 30. And then this particular rule has a lot of other ones. So the comma is just saying that, okay, I want the font size to be 30 for this and this and this. So you can specify, instead of having to put wrapper post content H2 font size 30 and then another one wrapper title H2 font size 30, you can just wrap them all into one CSS rule separated by commas and then put the font size there. So that's a couple examples of where those rules are coming from and how you can read them, hopefully understand them a bit. But it does sometimes take a bit of experimentation as to which rules are better. So let's look at one other example. So this is another site, and we've got these events that are output by the shortcode in the sidebar. And now how do we change the spacing in between them? So if I kind of right click and inspect somewhere, I just selected, this Palma Valley. If I click on the location, I'm not really seeing any spacing. So I see a bit of spacing there, venue details. But now if I go to a particular event, there you go. So now I can see it does change the color. You can remember it was orange before, now it's kind of green. But you can see, okay, that's where some of the padding is coming from. So I can see ECS events, default 1. So this is our ECS events, default 1. And now for each of the events, and you can see it's highlighting both events, let's add padding. Instead of it being padding top, padding bottom, or we had margin top, margin bottom, it's using this kind of shortcut. And it's saying, okay, 1.75 EM. Again, I don't really know the units or can explain them very well, but that's a way of specifying how much space. And you can see that translates, because it's just this and then 0, it translates to top and bottom are 1.75, and then left and right are 0. So if I want to either remove or shorten how much space is coming in between, you can see if I just remove it by checking and unchecking, that looks pretty good. That's getting rid of most of the space, so it's a bit easier to read. So if I just click on the plus here, it's again going to try and give a suggestion. It's actually doing it by category. This one has the category of bus schedule and also special event. So that's nice. So you could actually specify different, maybe background color or color by different categories, because these classes are here. But say I want to have this exact rule, I can just copy this. So copy this here and then paste this in here and then do padding, say top of 0, and then padding bottom of 0 as well. So then you can see now with this particular rule, and by specifying top and bottom of 0, I now get this. So now I have less spacing in between the events, and that's great. And again, we can copy and paste this. I can copy this, go into my site. So if this is your site and you're logged in, at the top, there would be a link to go to Customizer. But again, because I don't have access to the site, just as an example, you'd again go to Customizer at the top, you'd be here, and then now I can paste this other rule into this, and if I save this, hopefully that would appear. So if it doesn't, and you're wondering, okay, why isn't, when I save it and it's applying, why isn't it working? So sometimes rules will have this thing here, either important. So by saying 0 and important, you're making that rule a lot more specific and important, so that it'll override even if the order is different. Because if the rule that you're trying to override happens after wherever this customizer or your WordPress theme will put that rule, you might need to put important here. It's not usually best practice to put this exclamation mark important in there, because it makes it harder for someone else to then go in and override it. But because this is kind of the last override and the last thing that you're doing, you can add this important piece here. Some other thing that might be happening is maybe there's some other rule that's making it happen. Again, this important can kind of try and override that. So it's definitely the first thing to try, is add important at the end of each of your rules. So stay here as well. Save it again, publish it, and see if that does the trick for you. Otherwise, you might need to make it more specific. So again, you can read up on CSS specificity, but essentially each of these things that are added in the rule give it or kind of worth some points, right? So if you remember before, we had that wrapper ID. So it might be different for your theme, but if you see a rule and you're adding it where there's this ID of wrapper, the ID gives it, I think, 10 points, like a lot of points, because it's very specific. Like there can only be one element on the page with this ID. So you're saying this rule is a lot more specific by adding that. So by adding that in, plus all the other stuff, you're making that rule more specific than just having this without it. And so adding that can then, again, be able to override the other rule without needing this important. So you can totally try that and read up. Like these classes, if you add more than one, I believe it adds more specificity. I think they're only worth like 1 point instead of 10 for an ID. But by adding more of them and just making it more and more specific, there's a better chance it'll work for you without having to add this important tag at the end. But it still will do the trick, even without that. So one last thing I wanted to show before wrapping up is how do you find out? So if you're scrolling through and you're just like, there's a lot of rules here. Like, how do I find out, what color is being applied? So you can see, okay, this had this color of 0, which is black. And then this other rule came in, and because it was more specific or showed up afterwards, you can see this is crossed out, so this one isn't being applied, but this one's being applied. But you're scrolling through and you're trying to figure out, okay, what rule is being applied. It can get a little confusing. So one nice little tool in Chrome is this computed piece. So you can actually see where what padding is being applied, the border, if any, margin. This is margin, this is padding. But you can also scroll down and you can actually see all the different rules that are being applied to this particular element. So actually, let me highlight, say, this, maybe H2, and you can see as I click around, it'll show the different rules that are being applied, and it'll give you an idea as well as to what rules you can add. So we've got this font style, font size, font family, which says, kind of what font it is. And this is coming from the theme, that particular font. You can see your line height and your letter spacing. So that's the spacing between letters. And some other very common ones are color. So that'll be the font color itself. And this, I don't think you can have a background color. Maybe you can, but more for a div, sometimes you can have a background color. So this doesn't have a background color specified, but say I went in, so this is a summary, maybe ECS event. So for each event, I want to have a different background color. So if I click on this plus, you can see it's doing this ECS event, etc., etc. I can just remove this because I don't need all those classes. I just want for every ECS event or every element with ECS event, I want it to have a background color of red. Okay, so that doesn't look very good, but maybe something a little more subtle. So maybe FA. No, I think that's actually exactly the same. It's the joys of live coding. Things can not work out. There you go. So that's a little gray. Again, not a designer, but this might be the background color that you'd like on each of the events. And by adding that background color, now if I go back into computed, doesn't actually add that in. Maybe if I click off and then click back on, there you go. So it didn't, that's interesting. It didn't actually automatically refresh, but now when I click off something and click back on, now we can see this background color. And if I click on this little down arrow, you can see, okay, because it has the class ECS event, this background color is being specified, and actually gives me a link to exactly where that rule is being applied. So because I added this within the style sheet, it's showing up here. If you added it in your customizer, it'll probably jump you to a particular part in the page. Let's look at another example. So we've got, say, the color, and you can see this is being added in. Looks like there's some styles or a style sheet. So if I click on that, it's actually going to load the style sheet because it's all compressed. It's all in one line. So that's not a great example. Let's look at one from here maybe. So if I look at, say, the the wrap here. So that's just the wrap, it looks like, for the sidebar, and we've got the background color here. So say I go background color and then index here. Again, it's all on one line, so that's not the best example. Maybe there's another one. Yeah, so this is coming from a CSS file. There we go. So that's a little better. So you can see that this particular rule of on the body tag, which is one of the main ones or top level ones for your page, it's adding the font family or the font size, line height. It's adding all those. So you can see exactly where it's coming from, either under computed and by clicking on this link. And you can even see the ones that are being overridden for that. And then you can also, when you're under styles, you can also click on this link here to see, okay, where is this particular rule being added? Click on that, and you can just kind of see the actual CSS file for usually your theme and where that's being added. So this computed tab, super helpful to see what rules are being applied and which ones you might want to override. So that was a lot. That was a crash course. Hope it's been helpful on how you can change and find the CSS rules that are being applied to your site. And if you're looking for a nice way to add events to your site using the events calendar by Modern Tribe and add them to different pages or your sidebar and whatnot, definitely check out the events calendar shortcode in Block Pro, and you'll hopefully be a little more confident adding some CSS if needed to change one of these designs.